Welcome back to Discovering an Educated Life. This is Megan, and today I'm going to be walking you through Language Arts 3 with Sonlight. And we did about 15 weeks of this last year in second grade. My daughter placed a little advanced, and she was where we needed to be, I think, with spelling and readers, but maybe not so much with writing. So I'm gonna walk you through and show you today what that looked like and kind of give you a review of that. Before we get started today, don't forget to like or subscribe to my channel. If you're interested in finding out more information about homeschooling, if you're interested in just good literature and books, or if you're interested in homeschool curriculum, specifically literature-based curriculum, don't forget to ding the bell. So I did share this in another video. This is Language Arts 3, and this is the guide. And it's just a 1 week. I'm gonna walk you through what that looks like, but kind of show you more in depth, because it's kind of hard to see when you just see this, like, okay, well, we're gonna do spelling and phonics, and it's just kind of vague. So I'm gonna actually walk you through this, and this is all available on Sonlight's website. And I will link that below, and you can get on and request a sample, and they'll actually give you 3 weeks. So you can kind of see what this is looking like. So spelling is all gonna be in the guide. You don't need a separate book for this. It's going to give you a rule and write, a pre-test, a check, a post-test, write a sentence, and alphabetize. It does have an optional phonics book, which you can see we did not use for second grade. We were using Spelling You See also, which is a little different than a normal spelling program. So it wasn't like we were necessarily using two typical spelling programs, but we used that kind of like in place of doing a phonics program. So you can use whatever handwriting you want. They sell multiple programs on their website, and we were using Handwriting Without Tears in second grade. And then they have the readers that come with the language arts. Well, they don't come with the language arts, but they come with an HBL package. And then you can buy this language arts pack separate. And then it's going to have vocabulary development, which is an optional book, which is Wordly Wise. That's an optional thing, because if you're using Sonlight for their HBL, they have a lot of built-in vocabulary, and there's also built-in vocabulary in the readers. So this is just an optional additional workbook, which we did choose to use. And then there's going to be creative expression. So I'm going to walk you through what that actually looks like, because it's kind of vague and confusing. There's a lot of content here. For spelling, you're going to have a rule and write. And so it tells you here, your rule is going to be that consonants can appear at the beginning, middle, or end of words. That's a super basic rule. Some of the other spelling rules are going to be a lot more detailed than that one, because that one's very vague. Some of the other ones are more important. I feel like most third graders probably understand that rule. And so the words, this is your list. And so a lot of times I would either write those out or type those up for my daughter, and then she would copy them on the first day that we got our new list. And there would be like an explanation, and they would tell you, like, read the rule to your child, talk it through, and all of this is just here. You can have them write it on a whiteboard. I always did that. I would have her go write on the whiteboard or the chalkboard and write all her new words out. And then it would have this, read the script, this whole pink box. Anytime you see that in the guide, it was typically something for you to read aloud, and it's just explaining what consonants are. I mean, it's kind of review starting out the year. And then that was pretty much it for day one, rule and write. Now, another thing that was on day one, you'll notice back here. So day one, rule and write. And then we had alphabetize was our activity. That's this. And they're just telling you to write the spelling words in alphabetical order. And then they just right here showed you what the alphabetical order was, so that you wouldn't have to think about it and you could just check. I mean, obviously it's a pretty simple list, but it's nice that you could just look at it real quick and make sure they did it in order. So they would have done alphabetical order. And then so each day there's going to be another thing. So that was it. It looks like pretty much for day 1. So day 2 had the pre-test for spelling. Day 3 had check. Day 4 had post-test. Day 5 had write a sentence. And it's all there explaining to you what to do. And I noted that I actually put this little tab that said spelling because they didn't always explain the rest of this, like pre-test or check or post-test or sentences. They didn't really explain what that meant and the other weeks. So if I forgot about it, or if my husband was using the guide, or even a couple times my mom did a lesson with my daughter, and it just said check, and they'd be like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, go back to week 1 and look at it. It'll explain it to you. So then this is the optional phonics, and these are just like the answers. So you don't have to buy the teacher's guide because it was really expensive. And you can just have the answers provided for you right here. Well, for us, we didn't even use that, so we didn't need it, but it's nice that they did that for you. Handwriting, they tell you can use whatever you want, but they do have a handwriting schedule on Sonlight, which you can just download and print off, and we did that with our Handwriting Without Tears in 2nd grade, and that one worked really well. Just the schedule was really nice. You could it helped you to plan, and that way you could use anything you wanted for handwriting. The readers I will share. There's a large stack of readers I have sitting next to me, and I was going to go over the ones we went through. And then vocabulary development. It's kind of just explaining that there's a lot in the HBL itself, and there's a lot of just vocabulary built into the reading. So, and the cultural literacy is too, but that you can use the optional workbook. Creative expression, I will go over those lessons with you. And they're usually copy work. And then there's copy work application. And then there's again, whenever you see this is something you're going to read to your child and talk about. And this week happened to be writing titles. So you're writing book titles, and had an activity that was in your worksheets because it came with all the worksheets. Then you were working on diamond notes. And I'm just kind of walking you through. So again, it's a pink box. You're going to read this to your child. And so I didn't always read that word for word, but I would at least browse it. There's more of it. And again, these are not all on the same day. That was a correction I found. So that was not all on the same day, obviously. You're going through this whole week. And then you always have a rubric. So the rubric for the diamond notes for days 3 and 4, there was a rubric explaining what to do. And then there would usually be an optional second copy work for day 5, which would be the last day of the week. So these were part of that. And that is pretty much, that's pretty much what you would have for a week. Now, this is my daughter's 2nd grade binder. So I'm just going to show you how that looked. Now, not everything here is going to be from Sonlight because we only use Sonlight for half the year. So I believe it started where you would see composition right here. Or no, our spelling. Is that it? Here. These were our spelling list. So she would do her writing on her Handwriting Without Tears paper because that's what we were using last year. And she would have, I'm just kind of showing you an example. This was probably the first week, the first couple weeks of school. 5 times. This was sound list. Yeah, that was, sometimes we'd have to do sound list. So, yeah, she had to write a sentence. This was a pre-test. So I will tell you, because I'm doing kind of a review here, this is one thing I would change. I don't love pre-test. I think that it wasn't super helpful. If it was up to me, I would just give her something else to do to practice on these pre-test days, like writing the words again, or doing rainbow writing with them, doing them on the whiteboard, something else fun. There's so many different things you can do. I would not do the pretest. If we use Sonlight again, I won't do this. I just don't think it's super helpful because they haven't had a chance to practice the words and then they're remembering how to spell them wrong. So I just don't like that. So here's another spelling list, spelling test. And she did really well, I think, for a 2nd grader doing a 3rd grade spelling curriculum. I think she actually did pretty well. So I will flip ahead and show you when we have composition here. These are the actual worksheets that came with Sonlight. So you'll see there's a copy work like we were reading Clara in the Book Wagon, I believe this was from. And then what they would have her do was like underline and circle her best. So she would use like her red pen and circle her best letters or underline letters she thought needed work. And so that's why you'll see those marks on there. And then where it's underlined, because she was underlining it because she was learning about book titles in writing, that you would underline those and capitalize certain words. And so then she had to write a sentence that includes the title of her favorite book. And then she had to write a sentence that includes the title of her favorite movie and her favorite television show. And so it's super like straightforward and basic. Now these were diamond notes, and this was just establishing, pulling your thoughts together for writing. So she did one with holidays, one with sports, one with tools, and one with shapes. And this got much more difficult. Like I said, she ended up struggling a little with the writing. This part was fine. It was when she got a little deeper into it. This was weather theme. Like once she got further into some of the diamond notes activities where she had to actually do a lot of writing and then rough drafts and post writing, it was just a little much for a second grader. In hindsight, I would have changed that up a little bit, but it wasn't anything to do, I don't think, with Sonlight. It's just that she's so advanced in some of the other areas that I think it might have been a lot for her. It was just a lot for her to do the writing though. So then here's some more. This is from like week 2. And she had to do copywork application. There was more diamond notes. So we spent a lot of time the first few weeks just learning to organize thoughts, like favorite ice cream flavors, favorite snacks, favorite subjects, and then more copywork. So it's super self-explanatory, I feel like, here, how this looks. It's really straightforward. Now I want to kind of flip back a little bit to show you once we got a little more into the year or a little further into the program. I started giving her I let her like type this one up. I started just giving her little writing prompts and fun things because she was getting so overwhelmed. So she did well, but like I said, I started switching it up a little bit and just giving her something else. This was like character qualities, and they had her pick a character from the story, and she had to do all this like writing about him. This was another copy work. And like I said, I started giving her some writing prompts of my own that were a little bit more relaxed. And there was no rubric or anything to them because that started getting overwhelming to her. Her handwriting did really start to improve as well as we went through the year. But they started having these activity sheets too, where they were wanting her to organize. And then they did these diamond notes. And like, maybe I was being a little too, I was grading it and doing this. And after doing my assessments at the end of the year and talking to a couple of different homeschool moms and teachers, I think it was just a little much for her at the time. Like, I probably shouldn't have graded anything at this age and just kind of let her do her own grading. The reason it says no concluding sentence is because that's specifically what we were supposed to be working on that week. And so I tried to be like not super critical, but it was easy to get carried away with that because we had a rubric. So I decided that just wasn't a good fit. So she did a really good job on this one. She had to do she chose a historical time period and where she would have lived. And she was saying she would live in Egypt in like 2000 BC. And she chose all this to write about. And then over here, this was like her final paragraph. And I thought she did pretty well. She did like shape poems. I know I'm showing a lot of stuff here. So She did a couple different ones. So anyways, that was the main stuff that she did for Sonlight's language arts. This is that Wordly Wise book that I was sharing was, that's that optional vocabulary. And so it's a really thin, it's not a super intense workbook. And we did choose to use it just because it was so simple. And I'll just open to a week and show you what it looks like. So it would just be like a word list. And there would be all this for her to read. And she would read the words and read the definitions. And then she would go in here and she would do true or false. And this would be like one day. She would read all this and do the true or false. And then the next week, her assignment would be to do this little hidden message. And then the next week, her assignment would be this crossword. And it's all about just like definitions and vocabulary. And then it would move on. So she would spend about 3 weeks on each word list. And that worked really well for her. And she did about half of this in second. And we actually were working through some more of it. And like I said, there's a good chance we may be moving back to this format of what we were doing with Sonlight just because it was really open and go for us. So I just wanted to share what we covered and did last year so everyone would have a good feel for how Sonlight works. So the last main part of Sonlight's language arts are these readers. And I'm just going to share those with you and just show you what they were and tell you how we liked them. So I'm going to start with this is the house on Willinska Street. I actually said I read this. I did not. This was not a read aloud. This was a reader. My daughter reminded me of that after I was doing the video. So I shared this as a read aloud and we read that over the summer actually going before we went to third and I just couldn't remember. She actually read this one. So then The Long Way to a New Land, she really loved both of these books. And this is what we liked, is that they were just actual books. Like, they weren't just a textbook. They weren't, like, just some, like, compilation of stories to get you reading. They were books that you can just go to the store and buy. And they actually had really good storylines. She actually really enjoyed both of these. This was Keep the Lights Burning, Abby. She loves, Abby actually, my daughter's name is Abby, and she loves historical fiction. So, or just any historical books at all. And this one actually is a true story. So she really enjoyed that. And she also really enjoys lighthouses. So I love that it's Reading Rainbow. It makes me feel like it's the 90s. Clyde Robert Buell is one of her favorite authors, especially loving the historical fiction. And this is Riding the Pony Express. But she also read The Secret Valley. And I have no idea where that is as I was doing this. But his books are a little wordier. But for her level last year, it was very appropriate. Clara and the Book Wagon. I feel like these are pretty spot on for a third grader. And like I said, she was a little advanced reader. So this was, I think, the first one we did. And it was such a good story. It was about a lady who has like the first like traveling library and this little girl who like grew up on a farm and her dad doesn't think it's super important for her to read because she's going to be a farmer, like a farm wife. So it was a really good book. The Chalk Box Kid, this is just a fiction book, but it's also by Clyde Robert Buell, which is not as common. Most of his are historical fiction. But she also had the Paintbrush Kid, and then she had the Chalk Box Kid. I don't know where the Paintbrush Kid is either, but I had to dig all these off her shelf, because once she reads them, she's allowed to take them to her room, and then sometimes she rereads them. So sometimes I can't find what I'm looking for later. Another Clyde Robert Buell, A Viking Adventure. This was really good. We actually, at the beginning of this school year in third grade, read this one. We hadn't got to it yet in our reading from last year. And we were studying Leif Erikson and the Vikings. So she went ahead and read this one while we were doing that at the beginning of third grade. So if we do end up continuing with the language arts with this guide, we may have to just substitute when we get to this book with maybe another Clyde Robert Buell book. The Littles. This was a really good one for her at that, like, just that really age-appropriate level, and it was fun. And we watched some of the old shows from the 80s, like the cartoons. It was cute after we did that one. Third grade detectives, this had the front and back, so it's like 2 books in one. And she loves like anything to do with detectives or mysteries. So that was a really good length of book for her as well. In Prairie School, there may be a couple more I'm missing, but this is just what I found on her shelf, and I believe what we used from last year. So that was Language Arts 3 from Sonlight. I hope that kind of gives you like a good idea of what it looks like. And I hope that's helpful if you are thinking about using this curriculum or if you are trying to figure out how to implement any of it. We really enjoyed the year. Honestly, the biggest hang up for us, which we have found with almost any curriculum, is that my daughter is a pretty advanced reader and speller, but it's not that she's not an advanced writer. She's actually a good writer. It's just that sometimes what they're expecting from some of those all-in-one curriculums when we're looking at language arts is a little more than her level, because I'm trying to up levels on reading. And I don't really want to piece it together. So going forward, I may just have to learn to expect a little less when it's telling me like the writing should be like this. Then I'm like, well, she's technically far behind that grade level as far as age level. Because when we did like second grade, she was only 7. She never even turned 8 during the school year. And she was doing the third grade work, which is meant for more like a late 8, 9-year-old. So I was probably expecting a little much there. So just let me know if you have any questions, if there's something you want me to show in a little more depth, or something that you want me to talk about with Sonlight or My Father's World or any other language literature-based curriculum. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.